Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and thank you very much for coming to see me and attending the 8th session of the Fusus al-Hikam class. There is no question that what Ustad and Sheikh Ali has to offer is much more relevant to what you guys need than what I can offer, so I apologize for that. But I'll try to be as useful as I can for this lesson, inshallah. Okay, so we are on Fuss Adam, and we're gonna do a little bit of reading. Let's get 3 volunteers, please, to read at least the first half of the page up to Fawasafa. So don't read Fawasafa, but just up to that. So the last sentence will be عنها تقديس آدم وتصبيحه. So if we can have some volunteers, please. 3 volunteers if possible. هدى, yeah, بسم الله.
أيوة. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
فغلب عليها ما ذكرناه وحكم عليها هذا الحال فقالت من حيث النشأة أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها وليس إلا النزاع وهو عين ما وقع منهم فما قالوه في حق آدم هو عين ما هم فيه مع الحق فلولا أن نشأتهم تعطي ذلك ما قالوا في حق آدم ما قالوه وهم لا يشعرون فلو عرفوا نفوسهم لعلموا ولو علموا لعصموا ثم لم يقفوا مع التجريح حتى زادوا في الدعوة بما هم عليه من التسبيح والتقديس وعند عند آدم من الأسماء الإلهية ما لم تكن الملائكة عليها فما سبحت ربها بها ولا قدسته عنها تقديس آدم وتسبيحه. Here where we stop, right?
Yes, please, for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we get a second reader, please? Any second volunteers, inshallah? I don't see any hands up, so we'll just go with this reading, inshallah. Okay. Khair. Unless I missed someone. No, it seems to be okay. Okay, inshallah khair. Yeah. So do we remember anything about the lesson we had last time? Are there any questions you want to go over just before I begin? Yeah, please let me know. If you have any thoughts or any queries about last time. No? Okay. So, right. We're roughly about halfway through the fuss. And there's a small caveat I think we need to remember whenever we're reading anything from the Shaykh al-Akbar, Qaddasallahu sirruhu. And that's, as you can see from the passages we just read, and even any of the passages we've been reading for the past few weeks, he's a very detailed writer, right? He's super detailed. And I think one of the challenges with reading his writing, so I think this will help you get to grips with him a bit better, inshallah, is that his writing tends to overwhelm the reader with a lot of detail, and then you get lost in the detail. That's done on purpose. That's done on purpose. So every time we go through a paragraph, it's not a bad idea to circle back to the main theme of the fuss and see how it relates to the main ideas of the fuss and to the bigger picture that the fuss is trying to speak to. So here we are talking about the angels, right? What is the scenario here? This is from Surah Al-Baqarah, right? So can someone explain to me what is the scenario that the Shaykh al-Akbar is referring to here? Yes, please. Thank you very much.
It's the scenario that was between Adam, I mean the angels and God at the time of the creation of Adam.
Yes, that's right. And what were the angels doing?
Actually, they were asking God, why would you create someone who would bring corruption to earth? من يفسد فيها.
That's right. Shahad and Irvina?
While we adore you, so you don't need adoration or anything like that, if I may put it like that. Because we adore you, why do you need to, in a way, create a new creation? Even though God doesn't, of course, need the angels' adoration, but
yeah,
they ask these questions.
Right. So here, the angels are protesting the creation of Adam, right? They're protesting the creation of Adam, and they're complaining about what they will foresee in the future when they say, will you place one on earth who will create bloodshed and fasad and corruption? Then what does the Shaykh al-Akbar say? He says something very interesting. So what they're saying, وَلَيْسَ إِلَّا النِّزَاعُ وَهُوَ عَيْنُ مَا وَقَعَ مِنْهُمْ. What's he saying here? What does that mean?
I'm not sure, but it's quite strange here. Is God telling them that what you're accusing Adam of is exactly ما وقع منهم?
Yes, correct. Correct. And it's strange, right?
Yeah, definitely it's strange.
How can Ibn Arabi say this? How can he say this? The word niza'a, what does niza'a mean? Niza'a means to dispute. So they're protesting the creation of Adam, but also means to fight and to struggle and to create strife and to protest and dispute. Now, if you think about it, what is al-fasad fil ard, right? And then there's an ayah in the Quran to the effect of people who say that بَلَ نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ, we're the ones who are fixing the earth. بَلْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ. No, they're the ones creating corruption, right? They're the ones who don't accept the qadr and qadha of Allah with what He has created on earth. They don't accept they do not accept His arrangement, right? And the placing of Adam alayhi salam on earth is an arrangement of Allah. And the angels did not accept that, or at least they protested with His creation before knowing the wisdom in that. So when you protest and you are against the order that is being established by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a form of fasad. So niza'a is a form of fasad in which you say, I think I might know better than you. And then you try to rearrange the order. But you can't do an order that's better than Allah, right? So the Shaykh Akbar is pointing out an irony. There's an irony here, right? Because the angels are being accused of doing the very thing that they are accusing Adam of doing. They are doing it too, right? Have you ever seen in your own life when someone makes a complaint about someone, but they're doing the same thing? Isn't that ajib? So that's what's happening here. And then he says, فما قاله في حق آدم وهو عينهم فيه مع الحق فلولا. And if anyone has any questions about the Arabic I'm reading, please stop me. Maybe the English might be easier for you, but I'm going to stick to the Arabic for now. Don't hesitate to ask any questions that you might have.
So just I have a question. Now this is interpretation, right? تفسير يعني. This is تفسير ابن عربي of this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah.
Is it tafsir or is it ishara?
It's ishara.
I don't know. Because Ibn Arabi doesn't tell you, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll come to Fas Nuh, and you're going to have a lot of questions. You're like, is this tafsir or is this ishara? Tilim Sani, the student of Ibn al-Arabi and student of Saduddin Qunawi, says it's tafsir. And if it is tafsir, it's a really strong tafsir. But I will not come down on it one way or the other. It could be ishara, it could be tafsir. By the time you're done reading Ibn Arabi, the question is not as important. I mean, it's relevant. There's no question that's relevant, but he makes important points, whether it's tafsir or whether it's ishara. فلولا sorry, Irvina, yes. And sometimes I might not see your hand, so you can just go ahead and unmute yourself. That's fine.
Okay, what's the difference between Ishara and Tafsir?
So tafsir is translated as exegesis, and it is a discipline within the Islamic sciences in which you interpret and try to understand what is the meaning of the Quranic verses and what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intend from those verses. And as a result of understanding those verses, what is being asked of you as a human being in order to implement his will on earth and obey him and avoid his prohibitions. So exegesis and tafsir is a very serious science. Ishara are some of the unspoken implications, not the direct understanding, not the direct application of the verses. Isharat, allusions, are some of the unspoken implications that might be implied by the verses, but you cannot expect someone to necessarily abide by them. You may agree or may disagree with someone's ishara. It's not binding on you, but someone's tafsir, if it is tafsir, is binding.
Thank you.
I'm just concerned that I might be going a bit too fast. If everyone's okay, I'll carry on.
Dr. Faris, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Back to what you were talking about with the sort of psychological phenomenon of projection. I don't read Arabic, so I'm just kind of curious kind of how that appears in the language, but that's the term that came to mind, this idea of projection and projection sort of into the creation, and sort of thinking about the links there with that particular word.
You know, that's such a fascinating question, because Ibn Arabi has a really good appreciation for the human psyche, and you will not find that with maybe any other author almost. It's really quite unique to him, and it's really impressive. He takes the understanding of human personality very seriously, and you're going to find that in Fasnuh as well. He looks at the way people behave, and he is very sympathetic towards which might call the I guess you could call it the faults of the human psyche and their the strengths and weaknesses of the human personality, and he exploits them fully whenever he's discussing a subject. Projection is just one term, but he really has a very strong appreciation for the way humans think and behave. And that also plays into his understanding of rahma, because you can only be what you are. In fact, we're going to read about this right now. The angels reacted the way they reacted because of he uses a word. What's the word he uses? Because of their nash'atuhum, right? What is nash'ah? Well, what is that? That is their constitution. This is the way they are made. So on the one hand, he's pointing out the irony of their protestation, but on the other hand, they couldn't have done differently. That's part of the human and even the creaturely psyche. They behave the way they were made. So there is a verse in the Quran spoken by Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam when he's talking to Fir'aun, and he tells him, هو الذي أعطى كل شيء I think it's no خلقه ثم هدى. هو الذي أعطى كل شيء خلقه ثم هدى. He is the one, Allah is the one who gave each thing its khalq, which is not just creation, but its entire makeup, its entire existential makeup. And then he guides it to implementing that potential which is within them. The angels could not have done otherwise, because this is how they are made. Muhammad, Sidi, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sidi.
Wa alaikum salam.
Sidi, but does this imply that the angelic psyche is kind of similar? Because you know that it's not to the human psyche, because this is a kind of disputation between the angels and Mawla Azza wa Jal, and or is this like a certain rank of angels? I don't know. Allah Alam.
Their psyche is not similar to the human psyche. You know, that's why there's an ayah in the Quran, if we send angels down onto earth, they can't help you because they don't know how you think. It's not similar. But there are overlaps, and the overlap is that they too have their own faults, just by virtue of not being Allah, because anything that's a creation, by virtue of being a creation, has its own weaknesses. There's a hadith which talks about another dispute about the angels, but in a different context. What is it? But it's in a hadith. When they are disputing what? Kafarat. Which one, when they are disputing the subject of expiations, the man or woman who walks to the mosque, who has a bath in the cold of night, right? Which one expiates their sins more than the other? So Allah tells Muhammad, what are the angels arguing about? He says, I don't know. And he says that 3 times. And Allah strikes his chest and he feels the coolness of Allah's hand in between his breasts. This is a hadith. And then Rasulullah, he tells us that the angels are arguing about kafarat, about the person who walks to the mosque. His sins are taken away. When he's bathing at the cold of night, his sins are taken away, and so on. So angels dispute, which is fascinating because we don't think about that much, but Ibn Arabi will bring it out. Okay. Okay. فلولا أن نشأتهم تعطي ذلك ما قالوا في حق آدم ما قالوه وهم لا يشعرون. Okay. If their constitutional makeup, this very stuff that they're made up of, because we're made out of tin and water, for example, right? The angels are made out of light, so their constitutional makeup gave them that behavior, just like we have our own constitutional behavior. So we act in a certain way due to our own makeup, just as the angels act due to a certain way due to their own makeup. They couldn't have done it otherwise. It couldn't have happened otherwise. And they were unaware of it because these things tend to happen subconsciously. فَلَوْ عَرَفُوا نُفُوسَهُمْ لَعَلَّمُوا, right? Or لَعَلِّمُوا. If they had ma'rifah of their own selves. So we can translate that as if they knew themselves. But it's more than knowledge, it's ma'rifah. What is ma'rifah? I mean, I'm sure Ustad Ali has mentioned this too, but let's go over it again. What is ma'rifah? Ma'rifah is what you can translate as Gnostic knowledge, but it is more like direct knowledge of a thing and its reality as it is, especially the ones you call the arifin. Yes, no, it's just direct knowing through experience. Yes, exactly. It is knowing a thing as is in itself, but through tasting. That's exactly it, through dhawq, which is one of the highest forms of knowing. Once you know something through dhawq, you know its reality. So فَلَوْ عَرَفُوا نُفُوسَهُمْ لَعَلِمُوا, they would have known properly. And then Ustad Ali talked about last time about the different connections with ilm, right? Ilm and alama, for example, right? They would have had the signpost that guide them towards true knowledge if they had a true tasting of their own inner selves. So they didn't have this tasting before. وَلَوْ عَلِمُوا لَعُصِّمُوا. And had they known the proper way to behave through that tasting of their own selves, they would have been protected from that mistake they made. Let's address this now. Can angels make mistakes? What do you think?
It looks like it here.
So there's an ayah in the Quran, which is correct, that the angels cannot disobey Allah, but they can make other mistakes. So they have no ma'asiyah. Angels don't have ma'asiyah, but they can have mistakes. What is their mistake here? Their mistake is protesting the creation of Adam, which is a form of lack of adab. So their mistake is lack of adab. They're protesting against what Allah was going to put on earth before understanding its wisdom. That is a lack of adab. A lack of adab is a mistake for an angel due to their high nature. ثم لم يقفوا مع تجريح. What's تجريح?
Talking bad about something or someone.
Yes. It's a kind of defamation, which has its جذر as what? جرح, which is a form of injury, right? So they didn't stop there. So Ibn Arabi is now showing us the limitations of the angel's constitution, which shows why they did what they did. They didn't stop there, so which is like the first mistake. They added to the first mistake a second mistake. حتى زادوا في الدعوة بما هم عليه من التسبيح والتقديس. And then they increased that mistake with, and on top of that, they added to that a claim to something they had no knowledge of. Okay? They were claiming something they had no knowledge of. With respect to doing tasbih and taqdis, in other words, we're the ones who do tasbih of you, and we're the ones who do taqdis of you, which the implication is that maybe Adam doesn't, right? So he's not protected the way we are protected. And which is the irony here? Because in saying what they said, they weren't protected from their own mistake. وعند آدم من أسماء الإلهية ما لم تكن الملائكة عليها. Adam has divine names the angels don't have. Why? Because he has the all-comprehensive constitutional al-jam'iyya, due to being this, again, his own constitution, which is a human being, the last creation that combines within himself the microcosm of everything that's in the universe, which means he knows divine names that the angels don't know. And the whole point of existence is to know Allah, especially through his names. That is the whole point of existence. And so they missed that point in that particular moment in time. فما سبحت ربها بها. So they did not glorify Allah through the glorifications that Adam had, alayhi salam. ولا قدسته عنها تقديس آدم وتسبيحه. Nor did they sanctify Allah through his sanctification. So they were missing knowledge themselves. They were missing forms of ibadah that only Adam alayhi salam could have. And so he excels them. He excels the angels in that respect through knowledge of the names, right? So again, like, we're getting lost in the details of a very intricate discussion on this one ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah to do with the creation of Adam alayhi salam. But what's the point of it? So we're going to come to the point of it in the next paragraph. CD, should I call you Derek or? Yes, see, go ahead. Is it Derek, CD?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wanted to mention one point that I think it's important. It's really cool for the narrative here. So these are the angels of the Sama al-Ard. So these are the angels in the first heaven. These angels in their creation, it said that they are similar to jinn. So basically, these angels, so they had experience on earth with the jinn, who basically had a series of wars.
Yes.
So the angels were basically expecting the human beings to do similar. So this is they're speaking from their previous experience with the jinn, but they projected that experience on Adam. Of course, as you're mentioning, without prior knowledge or without justification. So
really interesting.
Yeah, because of course, like the angels, the angels like Jibril, Mikael, these are the angels of the upper echelons of the echelon of the of the universe, whereas these angels are the angels of the earth. So just as a part of the narrative, but of course, all the angels do have intellect, and even Jibril and Mikael
that's
will
right.
even argue sometimes too. So
absolutely,
very interesting. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, Jazakallah khairan. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think even this point comes from tafsir if not Qasas al-Anbiya, but I think also tafsir as well, about the angels of the first heaven. So Jazakumullah khairan for sharing that. And then the Mughals have in the Mughal Empire, the Sufis then have a very interesting take on this war that you said that occurs between the jinns and the angels on earth prior to the coming of man, in an almost Tolkien fashion. That's also really interesting. And this connection between the angels and the jinn, Sheikh Al-Akbar also complicates it when he says that jinn and angels are separate creations, but etymologically, jinn refers to that which is hidden, and so can also refer to angels too. Can also refer to angels too, linguistically speaking. So Jazakumullah for sharing that. That's really interesting. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a question.
Please,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, can you just give me a source that that has this distinction of malaika and the rank of al-malaika?
I guess there's like multiple sources. Ibn Arabi has his own source if you want to look into it. It's in the Futuhat al-Makkiyah, and he'll talk about the ranks of different angels, and different kinds too.
But there's nothing in the ayah itself that refers to distinctions between malaika, right? The ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah.
There's other ayat. If you think about the surah, talks about names having, some have 2 wings, some have 4 wings, some have 6 wings. That's a kind of distinction. And then there will be some tafasir, right, that talk about muqarrabun. You know, when Iblis refuses to bow down to Adam alayhi salam, and then Allah asks him, what prevented you from prostrating to that which I made with my own 2 hands? You know, astakbartu am kuntu min al-alim. Who are the alim? The higher angels. So in the Quran, this distinction exists. Sidi Rad, you wanted to say something?
I was hoping that you didn't notice. I wanted that to be bypassed. I'm just going to say a couple of dots, and then hopefully we can connect it together. I don't know, but it's just coming to me in this way.
Sure.
The first point is there is a Cat Stevens line that's, I think it's talking about specific people, maybe like angels and humans, that the quote is, heaven must have programmed you. The second point is there, I think it's a hadith where when Pharaoh, he was drowning, and Gabriel, he went down and got dirt to cover the mouth of Pharaoh. And the whole story behind that, what I understood from it was, I was just questioning how, like, angels don't have free will. They're just programmed to pray. They're just programmed to listen, obey Allah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he then reveals, like, he already knew what Jibril did. And he actually programmed him or compelled him to do these certain things, because the whole essence of the story was just to show how Rahim God is, because even the off chance, Gabriel went because the off chance Pharaoh was going to say, forgive me, my Lord, I have transgressed and I believe in you. Gabriel, he didn't want to give the opportunity for Pharaoh to even do istighfar. So he kicked the mud or the dirt into Pharaoh's mouth in that regard. And then the third point has alluded, it was regarding what Brother Derek was saying. Just like any, this is not coming from me personally. I think there are sources, but I don't know what these sources are. But any creation that's created, there is the darkness, there is the lightness, there is the inhalation, there's the exhalation. And in that regard, today is very evident of what's happening with our brothers in the certain part of the world, where I don't want to say I all the time, but just like Jibreel has been made to carry out certain tasks for on behalf of Allah or by the command of Allah, he blows the spirit into the humans. But Iblis has that gift as well, where he can blow into a specific tribe, a specific people. And I feel like it's a specific tribe that can repent and come closer to God. And if we read the Torah, you can see elements of this. But also, just as the aspect of night and day, there is the the dark and the light. There are jinn who are Muslim for a specific reason. There are obviously devils who just want to, who are programmed just be like that. But I'm just putting these dots. I don't know what the connection is, and I'm just hoping that I think it's related to this.
Let me address the first 2 points you made, the first 2 dots. I don't know if anyone's familiar or has come across Fusus, which talks about what Irad has been talking about right now. But the short answer is for Sheikh al-Akbar, Fir'aun is forgiven. Yeah, Fir'aun is forgiven. And you made a very interesting point, because when by the way, so the angels don't have programming like robots. So maybe programming is not quite the right word to use, but the programming that's a bit more flexible that you're referring to is exactly the word here, al-nasha. It is this nasha that gives us the drive to act the way we act. And it is because of this nasha that we act for the reasons that we do act, based on our own biological makeup and constitutional makeup, or based, for the angels, based on their elemental makeup. That's why they act the way they act. This is the reason for it. There's that kind of programming, but not actual robotic programming. So yes, they do have like a degree of free will. That's why they protest, because if they didn't have free will, they wouldn't be able to protest, right? They have their own intellects, just like CD Derek was saying, especially the higher angels, Sayyidina Jibril alayhi salam. And you made a really interesting point, because Sheikh al-Akbar mentions this in the Futuhat. Because there's an ayah in the Quran, which I believe is in Surah Yunus, if I'm not mistaken, if someone can remind me the ayah. You said that Sayyidina Jibril alayhi salam, because Sheikh al-Akbar makes this connection exactly, takes some mud and wants to throw it into his mouth. What happens? You are muted, Sirad. But what happens is that there's an ayah in Surah Yunus that says, Amantu bi Rabbi Musa wa Harun, or something to that effect. Or actually, Amantu bi Rabb Bani Israel, right? I now believe in the Lord of Bani Israel, and wa ana min awwal muslimin, or what's that effect? I'm sorry. Someone has to get the exact ayah. So Sheikh Akbar draws a connection. Jibril did throw the mud, but it didn't reach his mouth in time. It didn't reach his mouth in time. So he repented, and in the moment when he repented, he was forgiven. Now, the Sheikh al-Akbar has a whole series of proofs for this argument, and then a whole doctrine concerning it. So we're not going to get into it right now, but that's his position regarding Fir'aun, and then the programming of the angels, as you put it. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll move on. Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, Jazakallah khairan, Brother Rod. Appreciate what you shared there. I think these lessons are so important because the Quran is filled with them, and even in the Hadith Nusus, it's filled with references to the angels, and these things are often forgotten. They give us a really clear cosmology of how things looks, and I think that's so important for the world that we live in today, because there's a particular sort of secular cosmology where all of this is just blocked out, subhanallah. In the Quran, as it concerns the angels, that they have ranks and they have forms and they have personalities. Some angels don't smile, others smile. Angels, they have, they even have, I don't know if they have psychologies, but clearly they have personalities where some are very, very stern. Others, shidad and ghilaz, like they're very, very, like even fierce and vicious. They have, and I think I just really appreciate Sheikh al-Akbar because he brings out this he basically gives the religious narrative very much set in this this ecosystem, or this cosmology, which is so important, because I think it's mostly lost nowadays. We just kind of just study the fiqh, and we have we study religion in a way that fits so neatly into the secular cosmology. It's almost criminal, where it's no spirituality. It's almost like 2D Islam, right? Very flat, very dry.
Yes.
SubhanAllah.
MashaAllah. Perfect.
I wanted to mention, with the angels, very beautiful literature with the angels. There's certain narrations, for example, we have Mikael, Jibrail, but there's also Israfil. With Jibril, of course, he's the angel of revelation, and he does many other things as well. Very special angel. Then Mikael, these are what they would call the archangels. Mikael, he's in charge of plant life and also the rains.
The rain, yes.
If you see lightning in the atmosphere, you can basically, that's a sign that he's directing the angels, and this is how Allah directs, like, what we'd call what's that called? Forgot what the name in English is. The study of weather. But yeah, the study of weather, where we just like see, physical phenomena, and that's
meteorology.
Yeah, meteorology. He's directing that. So I mean, that's science. We're not getting the full perspective. Sheikh Al-Akbar is saying, look at the whole perspective. Don't just look at the physical side. But then we have Israfil, who I think is really, really important. Israfil, and he's often not talked about in this regard, but he actually teaches the Prophet. He's one of the teachers of the Prophet, and he teaches the Prophet something really important called Kalimatu wa-shay. So this is basically the names and their entities, which is basically the foundation of Islamic education, which has gone by the wayside, of course. But it's a very, very simple thing where you have basically names and entities.
Yes.
And, it's basically, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ. It's the same thing being taught here. But with the kalimatu wa-shay, basically Israfil teaches the Prophet the science of how names correspond with their essences. And yeah, that's really important. Probably need somebody to write a book on angelology. We really do need it because it's like a subhanAllah, it's a pillar of faith actually. It's not a light thing.
Yes. And then
anyway, just some thoughts.
Jazakallah khairan, Derek. Thank you so much. And then you can add to that angelology is surely a branch of sacred cosmology, making the world and the cosmos sacred again and sanctifying it. So Jazakallah khairan, that's such an important point because, this reminds me, Sayyid Hussein Nasr, he said in one of his books that a boy goes into school enchanted by the world, and then he learns that water is called H2O and comes out an atheist, right? Like, we really need to understand, one, how to bring the calamic sciences into dialogue with modern science, which so many of our brothers are doing, mashallah, which I'm seeing, and then you have to re-sanctify the cosmos in a way that, again, is done in dialogue with the modern sciences, and not just flatten the universe through the use of just the modern and postmodern sciences. Yeah, go ahead, Sidi.
It's such a huge point. And there's we don't often talk about the reason why people feel doubt when studying that. But the reason is that actually, when you present science like that, the presentation of science like that actually has beliefs embedded in it. They just don't call them beliefs. There's like darkness that they have embedded in there that, they call it philosophy of science or they call it pseudo metaphysics, but basically they have beliefs embedded in the science, but they wouldn't say it. They just say, oh, these are just the facts.
Yes.
But no, you're actually giving secular values along with that, but you're not telling people. It's really deceptive. It's really, really nefarious, man.
It's really nefarious. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, people end up studying physics and you end up having all these doubts, even though the numbers, they work out, right? Well, I guess once you get to what do they call it? Quantum theory, then stuff breaks down. They recognize that, well, we can't really quantify that stuff. There's something in the beyond that we can't measure. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because it's so important that we I think problematize this. Like, wait a second, you claim to be teaching just the facts or just the objective reality, quote unquote, but you scratch the surface and do a little bit of research. They're actually spiritual and even metaphysical commitments that modern physics has or meteorology has. They have these commitments. They have beliefs, and many of the scholars in the field, they even mention that these are fideistic beliefs, meaning they don't have any proof for this stuff. It's a faith system. It's a faith system.
Fideistic.
Yeah.
And it's taken as just simple fact. when it's very far from that. Jazakallah khairan. As we say, في الأمر نفسه, but it's not. Yeah, not necessarily by any stretch of the imagination. And just to add to what you were saying, we talk about gut bacteria, for example, that breaks down food in the body. And we use this language because we want to control our body or different aspects of the body and the cosmos too. But the Shaykh Akbar talks about that as well. But you know what he calls them? He calls them the body's helpers. Your helpers. Not just mindless bacteria, gut bacteria, but helpers. And then he gives them another name, which I think will relate to the discussion that's been going on in the chat on the WhatsApp group as well, because this has been going on for a while, especially amongst the healers. They're called lata'if. He calls them lata'if. I mean, this is super fascinating, and we can go on all day, but thank you so much for bringing that up. See, Jazakallah khairan. And just a quick side note, like no, I'm supposed to be reading about the Fusus al-Hikam, but I'm also humbled to be in this group with the healers that were mentioned in the WhatsApp group, and CD Derek as well, and amongst all of you, mashallah. Like, I thought very foolishly maybe I'd have something to teach, but actually I'm seeing with people who are far more experienced than myself in many things. So jazakallah khairan for coming on. It's really quite incredible, and obviously I learned from all of you as well. So let's carry on then. Can we have a volunteer, please, for the next section? فوصف الحق لنا. Yes, Shahad, please go ahead.
أوكي. فوصف الحق لنا ما جرى لنقف عنده ونتعلم الأدب مع الله تعالى فلا ندعي ما نحن متحققون به وحاوون عليه بالتقييد. فكيف أن نطلق في الدعوة فنعم بها ما ليس لنا بحال ولا نحن منه على علم فنفتضح. فهذا التعريف الإلهي مما أدب الحق به عباده الأدباء الأمناء الخلفاء. ثم نرجع إلى الحكمة فنقول أعلم أن الأمور الكلية وإن لم يكن لها وجود في عينها فهي معقولة معلومة بلا شك في الذهن فهي باطنة لا تزال عن الوجود العيني.
Thank you so much. That was really nicely read, as was the last section read by the last person. Can we get another volunteer? And I think like you're also capable of reading the text. I'd love to hear a second voice, inshallah. Certainly better than mine. Sidi Mohammed, go ahead. Bismillah.
والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال المصنف رحمه الله: نفعنا بعلومه وعلومكم في الدارين آمين. فوصف الحق لنا ما جرى لنقف عنده ونتعلم الأدب مع الله تعالى فلا ندعي ما نحن متحققون به وحاوون عليه بالتقييد. فكيف أن نطلق في الدعوة فنعم بها ما ليس لنا بحال ولا نحن منه على علم فنفتضح. فهذا التعريف الإلهي مما أدب الحق به عباده الأدباء الأمناء الخلفاء. See, can you please scroll down if you...
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. ثم نرجع إلى الحكمة فنقول اعلم أن الأمور الكلية وإن لم يكن لها وجود في عينها فهي معقولة معلومة بلا شك في الذهن فهي باطنة لا تزال عن الوجود العيني.
Jazakallah khairan. And last reader, please, if possible. Okay, that's fine. Jazakallah khairan. Yes. So now we come to the whole point of this, and he explains to us very mercifully what is the point of this whole tafsir or إشارة. فوصف الحق لنا ما جرى لنقف عنده ونتعلم الأدب مع الله تعالى فلا ندعي ما نحن متحققون به وحاوون عليه بالتقييد. You see? So the whole point of this story, which he is telling us, and every story in the Quran has a purpose to it once you contemplate its deeper purpose, is that Allah Ta'ala is telling us not to make assumptions and to know that we cannot expect to know something except after having experienced it or having encompassed it. حَاوُونَ عَلَيْهِ. So we should never make a claim about something we don't know about it. That is super important. And then what does he say? He uses the word adab. Adab. Now for the Shaykh al-Akbar, now I don't know, can you see this? Are you seeing the text or my notes? You're seeing my notes. Okay, I'll have to fix that
And the
somehow.
text, both. You're seeing both.
And the both? Okay, just thank you.
Seeing only the text.
You're seeing only the text? Okay. Okay, I'll try to fix that as I learn more about the program. But the whole point of the story is to teach us about the importance of having adab with Allah. Now, for the Shaykh al-Akbar, the way Dr. Ali mentioned to you that the Shaykh al-Akbar belongs to something called the method al-tahqiq, right? You can also add to that and say that his entire hermeneutics, this is not an exaggeration, his entire method of understanding reality is based on adab, the hermeneutics of adab. And so we cannot exaggerate or talk enough about the importance of having adab with God and his messenger and the Sharia. They are intertwined. You cannot come to know reality if you don't have adab. They're both intertwined. It's not like if I have adab, I deserve to know reality. It's more like you will misunderstand reality as it is if you don't have adab. They are intertwined. Ontology with ethics. Ontology and epistemology with ethics. They go hand in hand. You cannot separate them from one another. We can distinguish them in our minds, but they cannot be separated in reality. So we cannot talk enough about the importance of adab in the writings of Shaykh al-Akbar, where he never ceases to talk about it. You can understand his entire philosophy. I'm sorry to use this word, it's not very accurate, but just as a shorthand. You can understand his entire system or philosophy through adab. Now, adab is important with all the awliya. We have to say this. There's no question about that. But Ibn Arabi is distinguished to them in that you can't understand reality except through adab. So he goes one above that. So we're going to talk about a little bit about adab here because he takes it very seriously. So we also ought to take it seriously here as well. So the whole point of that story with the angels is there was a lack of adab, which led to them not knowing themselves and therefore not understanding the hikmah of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam being put on earth as Allah's creation. We are asked not to make assumptions about things we don't understand or have not had experience in. Another word for that is, of course, dhawq. If you've not had dhawq of something, be quiet. Don't talk about it. He takes it very seriously. And this is a principle of such importance, it will take many lessons, if not months or years, to fully unpack what it means. Amira, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a question about فلا ندعي ما نحن متحققون به وحاولنا عليه التوحيد.
Yes.
ما نحن متحققون به, my understanding of it is what we have knowledge of, right?
What you have tahqiq of?
What you have, so you have tahqiq or a certain degree of realization of this thing. Right.
It's not book knowledge, it's personal self-realization. You've done tahqiq in it by either by aql or by kashaf.
Okay, so in this case, the angels didn't have this tahqiq, right?
Yeah, correct, yes.
So why is he saying فَلَا نَدَّعِي مَا نَحْنُ مُتَحَقِّقُونَ بِهِ? The way the confusion, where the confusion comes is because they didn't have the tahqiq, then the lesson that he's trying to say is فَلَا نَدَّعِي مَا نَحْنُ لَسْنَا مُتَحَقِّقِينَ بِهِ, as so I'm a little bit confused. Did you get my question, or am I babbling and not?
فَلَا نَدْعِي means we should not. That's the meaning of the sentence here. فَلَا نَدْعِي, we should not. We should not. As opposed to we don't. He's not saying we don't. He's saying, therefore, we learn from the lesson, مَا نَدْعِي, we should not make claims about things we've not done tahqiq on.
Yes, but then the Arabic text itself says we shouldn't make claims about things that we have realizations of. That's my confusion. That's where my
no, negation.
فلا ندعي ما نحن متحققون به. I don't know. I'm a little bit.
I can check it up against my version of the book and see if there's an error, because I think we're using an edition here, the Afif edition, if I'm not mistaken, that does contain some errors, right? But that's not the meaning. It is a negation. We do not make claims about things we have not encompassed. We have not done tahqiq on. For sure, you can make claims about things you've actually done tahqiq on and you have realized and you encompassed, right? For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a bad negation, but I'll double check my own version. Yeah, that's it.
Could I ask, is ma'rifah the same as tahqiq, or is it slightly different?
They're related. They're related. Different meanings, like different shades of the same idea. Different shades of the same idea. Ma'rifah connotes almost like a mystical apprehension of something, right? That has no physical intermediary, especially no intermediary through the aql. Tahqiq can be done by the aql or by the qalb.
Okay, thank you.
Most welcome. Yeah, so let's get back to it. Then I'll double check the text to answer Amira's point that she made earlier on. So فنعوم بها ما ليس لنا بحال ولا نحن منه على علم فنفتضح. It's not a question mark. It's not a question mark. But so I don't think I can edit the text. Okay, so anyways, it's not a question mark. So what's فنفتضح? And then I'll get back to Arab in a second. But what's فنفتضح? It's from fadiha, right? And what's fadiha? We say it in modern Arabic as well. What is fadiha?
Scandal.
Scandal, but it's not a scandal here. It's closer to another idea. But yeah, scandal is one translation. What's another translation?
Exposed. To be exposed.
Exposed. Another meaning though. Another meaning. To be disgraced. Which of course is connected to being exposed. When you're exposed, when your mistakes are exposed, you've been disgraced, right? Also, and also embarrassment too, because then you would be disgraced, right? When your lack of knowledge of the thing as it really is in itself has been exposed. When you don't have actual ilm about what its reality is, when you don't know what its hal, you've not done tahqiq on it, you have no ma'rifah of that. So this is a lesson for any salik who is undergoing the tariqah to the path of Allah. Don't ever make a claim about something you have not really tasted. Be wary, be conscientious about what you have not tasted. So these are the udaba, the masters of divine etiquette and spiritual comportment, right? And they are a category of saints, but all the saints strive to have adab with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Shaykh al-Akbar, in his capacity as being the seal of Muhammadan sainthood, has mastered adab to a degree that no one has before him. And that's why he focuses on it so much, even though everyone knows about the importance of adab. But with him, he takes it to the next level. You can't achieve reality or knowledge, you cannot achieve knowledge of reality as it is without adab. So let's go through some examples of that, right? In the Futuhat, he talks about, I think so this is in the second fasl of the Futuhat. The Futuhat divided into 6 sections. In the second section, he talks about the different Sufi maqamat, right? Maqam tawbah, maqam mujahada. So in one of them, he talks about maqam al-futuwa, right? Now, there's an example of adab there. So I'll tell you a story, and we'll take it a bit slow, and maybe we'll try to aim to finish within half an hour so that this isn't a very long lesson. So there were a group of people who were coming to the Sheikh's house to have a meal. And so he invited them for a meal. And they were in the waiting room, not inside the dining room, waiting for the food to be served. And they waited and they waited and they waited until someone went in and asked, what's happening? We've been waiting this whole time. We're very hungry. We've traveled a long way to come here. And there's a murid who was responsible for setting up the food. He's sitting at the table and there's a bunch of ants on it. And the people are very upset, like, what are you doing? We want to eat. And he says, I don't know what to do, because part of futuwa is chivalry, right? And so when you try to master the maqam of chivalry, you try to give each thing its haqqa and serve them, which can be translated into not just chivalry, but being a hero as well. So the ants, if he tried to move the ants, he might disturb their eating or kill them. So he didn't know what to do. So that's an example of futuwa, right? Towards Allah's creation. And so he did not want to wrong the ants, right? But now there's a second section after that called Maqam Tarak al-Maqam. Maqam Tarak al-Futuwa. When is it better not to always do futuwa? And he does this back and forth throughout that whole section, the whole fasl in the Futuhat, which doesn't mean you abandon the whole maqam, because then you'll be thrown out of the divine presence. But it means you reach its highest peak understanding when you dissolve the duality that's involved in that maqam, between the duality between you and Allah. So then the Shaykh al-Akbar says, yeah, but the people are coming in hungry, and this is an example where maybe you shouldn't keep them waiting, and they're tortured by the lack of food after having traveled a long way. So then he says, but someone might respond, but the ants are pure. They deserve to have that food more than human beings, and so the human beings should wait, right? You could argue about it from that vantage point, that the ants have a purity that the humans don't have because they're sinful. But then Shaykh al-Akbar responds to something very interesting. He says, yeah, but what about their constituent body parts? Their hair on their head, for example, is not sinful. Their hair on their head is pure. Eyelashes, eyebrows. Their skin is pure. Their fingernails or toenails are pure, right? All why? Because they're all doing tasbih of Allah. Everything in creation, including our fingernails and hair, and every single thing is doing tasbih of Allah. They're pure. Why don't they deserve the food more than the ants? So in that situation, when the murid is confused, he ought to go to the Shaykh and ask, Shaykh, what should I do? That's what he should have done. He should have gone to the Shaykh and say, what is the best thing to do in this situation? So then the responsibility falls upon the Shaykh. But that is an example of the importance of adab. You're having adab towards Allah's creation and towards human beings as well. You know, and there's a question of sacrifice. Who is supposed to make the sacrifice? Adab tells you what the right answer is. And it's an extremely difficult path. But when you've mastered adab, then you've really mastered the path. And then you are permitted to view Allah's secrets. So there's a chapter in the Futuhat, chapter 560, about a story. It's similar to Qasas al-Anbiya. You know, it's not important about whether it's true or not, but the lesson is quite important. Or Musa alayhi salam is walking in the desert, and there's a bird being chased by a vulture. And the bird says, "Oh Nabi Allah, don't let the vulture eat me. Please protect me." But what's the problem? The vulture is also hungry. Says, "Oh Nabi Allah, oh Prophet of Allah, don't deprive me of my food." What do you do in that situation? Really, it's really extremely difficult answer. So what does he do? He sacrifices himself. He slices off a part of his own arm to give his meat to the vulture, so that the vulture is fed, and then the bird is saved, right? And that is through his love for creation. And then there's a third example from Surah Abasa. And if you have any questions, please just interrupt me. What is the surah, the first part of Surah Abasa about? عبس وتولى.
إن جاءه الأعمى.
Yes, what is it about?
أدب. It's about أدب.
Okay, but just explain the story to me very quickly. What's the story?
It's about someone turning their back on a blind man, and unfortunately most of the scholars have interpreted this as the Prophet ﷺ doing this, but after more investigation there are other new scholars saying that it is Khalid ibn Walid's father, who was known to be he was a judge, I believe, and he was a very just kind of person who even forbade alcohol pre-Islam. So he was the one who was always present with the Prophet because there's not only Abasa wa Tawalla injahu a'ma, there is another ayah, I've forgotten it, but he was also present during this ayah, and this is the connection, that it was not to prove that the Prophet is just a human being, but it was actually, in fact, that was this person, Khalid ibn Walid's, he's called Walid ibn Hagar.
Okay. Let's not get into that discussion because I'm not familiar with it. We'll just go with Sheikh al-Akbar's interpretation, in which it's Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the man who turns away is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? But it'd be interesting to see why, though. And as Derek is saying, there's a moral predicament between two good choices, but what's the better one? Exactly. So let's look at that. So Rasulullah wanted to call the leaders of Quraysh to Islam. And he was sitting with one of the rich Qurayshi leaders. And then one of the Sahaba, who's a well-known man, I need to look up his name, astaghfirullah. He was visually disabled. He came to Rasulullah in the middle of the discussion. And Rasulullah, he knew that the rich Quraysh don't like to interact with the poor. And so he didn't want that moment of da'wah to be interrupted by him coming and possibly spoiling the moment of da'wah. So when the blind man came to Rasulullah, the blind Sahabi, he frowned and turned away from him. And then Allah sent down the surah, right, to reprimand and teach Rasulullah what the right answer should have been. What was the problem in that situation, which is the problem of adab? What was his predicament? He had to make a choice. The choice he had to make was between the Qurayshi man whose heart was blind and therefore needed guidance versus the physically blind man whose heart did not need guidance. Who needed his attention more? So the Shaykh al-Akbar explains that as a predicament of wahdat al-wujud. When Rasulullah he could only, by the way, Rasulullah doesn't need the rich Qurayshi man. This is Akbari metaphysics. Why is he talking to him if he doesn't need the rich Qurayshi man? Because he isn't talking to the rich Qurayshi man, the rich Qurayshi chief. He's talking to the manifestation of Allah's name al-Ghani in the rich Qurayshi tribal chief. He's talking to the divine name al-Ghani. He's not talking to the Qurayshi leader himself. Because Rasulullah already mastered the maqam of poverty and he was well established in it, right? So then came to the manifestation of another divine name, which is from the ayah in the Quran, "O people, lend to Allah a goodly loan," right? In which you have a form of tashbih, which you don't take literally, but he's faced with two divine visions. Which one is he supposed to choose? He should have chosen the second one. And that's Allah teaching him adab. And so Rasulullah says that my Lord taught me adab and he perfected me in it, right? So adab is about trying to know what is the right choice to make, the moral imperative, in situations that are ambiguous, which you can't really decide except with the guidance of the Sharia, especially when it's a mystical vision of wahdat al-wujud. Which divine attributes do you address? Which divine attribute do you give priority to? That's a very hard question. Nothing can help you except the guidance of the Sharia. And that's the point of the lesson of adab that comes from Surah Abasa. And now, If we look at the Quran, right? If we look at the Quran, even the Shaykh al-Akbar's metaphysics extends to the very syntax, the order of words, and everything else in the Quran with regard to having adab with the Quran. And it's one of the most fundamental parts of his teachings, right? What does it say and not say? What does it speak about? Why does it choose this word? And what is it silent over, right? Because Allah's silences are part of his plenitude, right? His silence is speaking. He's not ignorant of something. If he is silent over a matter, it's on purpose and it has a meaning. So here's an example, another story from the Futuhat. When the Shaykh al-Akbar says, there's a hikayah, a story about someone who wanted to go on Hajj. But he didn't know whether the better choice was to go by land or by sea. He was confused. Should I travel by land, by sea? Advantages, disadvantages of going by land, by sea. So he confused himself. So he's like, listen, enough. I spent enough time deliberating over this question. The first man who walks by my way, I'm going to ask him what I should do. So who's the first man to walk by his way? A Jew. So he says, oh my goodness. But I'll stick to the promise I made myself, and I'll ask him, see what he thinks. So he went up to the Jewish man and told him about his predicament. Then the Jewish man replied, I'm surprised, don't you know your own book? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I'm going to read it here from the Word document. He says in the Quran, he says, هو الذي يسيركم في البر والبحر. So what does that mean with regard to how he should do Hajj with respect to adab? It says it in the Quran itself.
The bar comes first.
The bar comes first. So Allah هو فضل البر على البحر. He has given preference because he put it first. So you should travel by land. And then the man said, I did that, and I saw many blessings I would not have gotten had I gone by sea. And it was a very easy journey for me. So the order of the words in the Quran itself are not by accident. And when you have adab, I put things where Allah puts those things, then you see blessings in them. Because that's the structure of wujud itself. The ordering and structure of the Quran is a reflection of the ordering and structure of wujud itself. So to have adab with the Quran is to have adab with the universe. If that makes sense. Now let's go to Surah Al-Kahf, right?
So, I have a question because since you brought this up here with the Hajj, because when you were talking about the hawk and the bird and because what I had in mind, like the adab, is to follow the hierarchy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put. Like if he made the prey a prey and the predator a predator, I should have, like, the adab is to keep things as Allah did. Like I shouldn't interfere.
What does Revelation say about that? What does Rasulullah say about that? That's what determines how we approach it. Not just if there's prey and non-prey. Not just that. What does Wahi say? And what does the Sharia say? That's what guides us as to how we handle that situation. So one example is that for you, there's a hadith where one of the Bedouin was chasing a donkey. And Rasulullah, he became angry, right? He became upset. And what did he say? What is she to you? She'll find her own food. She'll find her own water. Why are you running after her? Leave her alone. So we do what he says. That's guidance.
But that kind of falls under the animal abuse part. It's different. Like that part, the thing I got in mind was Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, straight away. But when it comes to the other story that you were saying, it was mentioned in the Futuhat, regardless of its veracity, I don't know, it's taught me for a bit about, I don't know, it's like interfering with the hierarchy that God created.
Yes.
Because there's, I don't know, Allah. This is one.
No, there's a hierarchy, but then you refer to the Sharia as to how to handle that. to make our lives simple. How does the Sharia say we should handle that, right? That's it. Otherwise, if you try to interpret wujud, outer wujud, which is the cosmos, without reference to the Quran and the Sharia, that's tricky. Then you get into personal modes of relativity.
Yeah, but my point is, don't forget like the levels of hierarchy from the Sharia itself. Like as we were talking about the angels or the jinn, like everything has their. So even like the lion eating the deer, some way or another, if it's not explicitly mentioned in the Quran or the Sunnah, it is extrapolated from the Sharia that this is the hierarchy of the universe. So I don't know if my
even if you want to extrapolate it, you extrapolate situations that are not explicitly mentioned with the idea of the Sharia. For example, what is one thing you do? You do ijtihad as to what is the best outcome, for example, right? But then a sheikh and an alim, I'm not an alim. An alim will guide you as to what to do in that situation, right? For example, and if you can't find one, then ijtihad is what you have recourse to. CD Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention a really important point about, I forgot what exactly you had said, but it pertained to just looking at creation for itself without the proper, hierarchy. And that's basically, Aristotelian science, where they call it being qua being, where basically you start at the empirical level and you just remain there, basically. It's just like a circular sort of thing. SubhanAllah, alhamdulillah, we have Plato and Sheikh al-Akbar.
Yes.
Because, it's sort of a travesty that it's gone on for this long, where you just have this circular thought that just, it's like a decomposing mess.
Yes.
From Aristotle going to the scholastics and then to secularity.
Yes.
Yeah, so really important point here, being qua being, the whole, because basically, of course, for those who don't know, Plato doesn't doing being as being. He basically starts with theology, that it's God, or what he calls the good. It's a really important point of departure that that you noted.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you. And sorry, I just saw this now. Yes, the Sahabi's name was Ibn Maktoum. Thank you so much, Maryam. That's exactly it. Astaghfirullah. That's exactly it. Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Derek. Or is that already done? Okay. Okay, let's go through one more example. And then I think like we can wrap up for today so that we don't get overwhelmed, right? So then, Surah Kahf, right? Okay, let's go through the Arabic ayat. So this is another example of putting things where Allah puts them in the Quran, which is the eternal word of Allah, which reflects the eternal Lawh Mahfuz, the way things are, for example, right? So when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam wanted to meet Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam, and he was not able to bear patiently with what Khidr was doing, why was he unable to bear patiently with what Sayyidina Khidr was doing? He was unable to bear patiently. Sorry, go ahead, Mohammed.
Because Sayyidina Khidr was acting out of haqiqah and Sayyidina Musa was acting out of Sharia. So.
Well, Sheikh al-Akbar has an interesting interpretation about that in the Futuhat, where he says the only way that could happen, it's true, by the way, Sayyidina Khidr was acting out of haqiqah and ilm laduni, knowledge which is directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then he says that actually, still, you have to abide by the Sharia. Even if you have ilm laduni, you have to abide by the Sharia. But before the time of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that the Anbiya could have different laws. So think about it. The Sharia of Muhammad is addressed to the whole mankind. So because they're mukhatabun, they are obligated with responding to it. But that's not the case with previous prophets. Previous prophets, their Sharia was only addressed to specific people, not the whole mankind. So Sayyidina Musa, his Sharia wasn't addressed to Sayyidina Khidr. It was addressed to Bani Israel. So the deduction Sheikh Akbar makes from that is that Khidr was following the Sharia of another prophet. And that's permissible. when one Sharia contradicts another Sharia of the Prophet ﷺ before the coming of Muhammad ﷺ and his all abrogating Sharia. That's a very important point. Even with when you're asking with ilm laduni, and Sayyidina Musa ﷺ, he's still shocked by what happens. He's unable to bear patiently with what Khidr was doing. And this is the ayah in the Quran from Surah Kaf. قال ستجدوني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا عصي لك أمرا. But earlier in the surah, what does Allah say? And earlier in the surah, He says, ولا تقولن لشيء إني فاعل ذلك غدا. Right? إلا what? أي يقول, or wait, what's the ayah?
إن شاء الله رب
إلا
العالمين.
إن يشاء الله.
Thank you. إلا إن شاء الله. Okay. What's the difference between these two ayahs? With respect to the word inshallah.
Can you repeat the question again, CD? Sorry.
What is the difference between these two ayat with respect to inshallah? The difference between these two ayat is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one reciting وَلَا تَقُولُنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. He puts inshallah at the end of the sentence. Sayyidina Musa doesn't put it at the end of the sentence. So he did not put it where Allah put it. Because he did not put it where Allah put it, Sayyidina Musa, he added words to it after he said inshallah. قَالَ سَتَجِدُونِي إِن شَاءَ اللَّهُ صَابِرًا. So inshallah صَابِرًا وَلَا عَصِيَ لَكَ أَمْرًا. He should have said that before he said inshallah. Had he put the word inshallah where Allah put it, he would have borne patiently with Sayyidina Khidr. That's adab with the Quran. That's what adab means. You get the barakah from it when you put things where Allah put them. If anyone did not understand that, I will repeat it. MashaAllah. If you did understand that, then we can just, I think, wrap up here for today, right? Since this is the length we usually go to. And next time we'll get more into technical philosophy, discussing what's called the universals, which is important to understand with regard to Adam's knowledge, alayhi salam, of reality and wujud, right? The universals are important for that. So we can, or rather, Dr. Ali and Sheikh Ali, and see, Joshua will do that next time, actually. But that's what you're going to look into. But that's the importance of adab. And that's why he stresses the story about adab in this part of Fas Adam, which is related to being an Adamic human being and a fully complete human being. You have adab with Allah's law, and that perfects you. And you reach your humanity by having adab with His law. Relating the details back to the bigger picture. Yes, Hannah.
Was that with the the lesson of Musa where he slices off some of his own flesh to feed the bird?
Yes.
I mean, for example, because the brother was asking about that as well, and then, I mean, we could ask ourselves, what lesson can we personally take from that? And you can say, who? Well, I know I would find it probably very unlikely that I would be able to slice a bit of myself off to feed the bird.
I wouldn't do it either. Yeah.
But then, so is it as an example show us our level relative to those who are above us, and that's a way of being in correct adab with other people, as something to do with adab in that lesson.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right?
I mean, yeah, I didn't explain the relationship of adab to that lesson a bit clearly, right? I think my thought about that lesson was that adab shows you how to resolve impossible situations through love of creation, and through which you get self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice. These are, of course, the major awliya and the prophets who sacrifice themselves in order to spare Allah's creation.
Yeah. Like mothers for their children. Oh, I just had to get that one.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. And you're going to see that in Fas Musa too. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Alhamdulillah.
Welcome. Walaikum salam. And Irvina?
Okay, I have a question and I do not know how I will be with adab in this question.
That's fine.
I was just thinking about Adam alayhi salam as a person who manifests and has the potential of all encompassing all the divine names.
Yes.
And the other human beings that have the potential,
yes,
but do not manifest it as we see it today. For instance, of course. With all this tyranny and all this mischief on earth, I was just wondering, would the angels be right for those that have the potential and are not manifesting it somehow? Because I understand to the rational level, but when it comes to practice, it's very hard to have that kind of adab that is required of us, especially in today's time. And I was just wondering, how do you cope with it in a way?
Okay, so there's two questions being asked here, right? One's to do with the angels and one's to do with our situation today and the relationship between those two questions. So in the first question, no, the angels would still be wrong. They wouldn't be right, I mean, seeing what they see today. Because if Allah SWT had not created Adam, who would not have been born besides the prophets? One prophet in particular, Muhammad ﷺ, who is the reason for creation. So, إِنِّي عَلَمُ مَا لَمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. I know what you don't know. That is the answer to everything, even though we can't see it. And then in the Akhirah, I will explain to you what you do not understand on this earth. So they were still wrong, but their nash'ah, their being, their elemental makeup and being could not have said otherwise. They could not have done anything other than be in shock and protest. So seeing the people who are here today and the complete other disappointments they are, some of them not even human beings, na'udhu billah, they've given into their bestial nature. Yes, how can we have adab with that? Obviously, as you know, you're not protesting against Allah, you're protesting against them, right? In order to correct the tyranny you see in creation. But to have adab with Allah, this is precisely why we learn the metaphysics of Shaykh al-Akbar. Because with the perception of wahdat al-shuhud and wahdat al-wujud, but wahdat al-shuhud is to see there's no doer on the face of the earth and the cosmos and all of being. La fa'al illallah. There's no doer but Allah. That's it. And then that's a balm for the heart and balm for the soul. And if you don't have that knowledge, then you're mahroom, really, because you're just going to suffer. Without this knowledge that there's no doer who does anything but Allah, and you take it as a spiritual practice, which I failed at. I'm trying to do better in, but you practice and you practice and you practice until you see that there's no doer but Allah, right? And that brings you spiritual, that's a spiritual practice that produces spiritual fruit. It is a spiritual practice that produces spiritual fruit. La fa'al illallah. So, wahdat al-wujud from the point of view of the af'al, and then wahdat al-wujud from the point of view of the sifat, and then wahdat al-wujud from the point of view of the that, tawheed al-that, tawheed al-sifat, and tawheed al-af'al. If you stick to the perception that the cosmos is dualistic, you're looking at cross-eyed. You might be a Muslim outwardly, but your inward is Majusi. There's only good, there's only bad, and that's it, right? You have a dualistic perception of the cosmos, that's a disaster. It hurts the heart, it hurts the soul, and you will create problems on the earth by having a dualistic vision of the cosmos, which doesn't have tawheed in it. Outwardly, you say La ilaha illallah, but your heart is saying, you know, good here, bad there. Good here, evil there. Because I can't see the connection. But with tawheed al-af'al, you make the connection. And so you've got to strive every single day to perceive that. And this is why we do dhikr, polishing of the heart, so that you only perceive Allah as the doer of all acts. And then you have adab. There is a story. I think like he didn't experience as much oppression as people are experiencing today. But anyways, his message is still relevant. Sheikh al-Akbar mentions one of his teachers who was walking along the shores with a man who was complaining about the corruption and tyranny of his times. And then the wali got angry and turned to the man and said, what is that to you? What is it your business between the master and his slaves? The divine names are seeking out his slaves, and he does with them what they will. So if it's the forgiver and the compassion seeking them out, that's the purpose of their dhulm. And if it's the shadid al-iqab and al-muntaqam seeking them out, that's the purpose of them doing their actions. What's that to you? If you are a murid.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Amira.
I don't know even how to formulate the question, but I mean, with all the evil in the world, we also, I mean, if we all take the stance of this wali who is kind of like preaching for others to just accept the the state of things as is, I don't know, it's a little bit problematic, because we are also asked and have the obligation to manifest other names like al-Muntaqim, al-Jabbar, or other.
But according to the Sharia, so I'm in no way, so I don't want to be misunderstood, because then we are dhalimun if we don't do anything. We are dhalimun if we don't do anything. I'm not saying sit on our behinds and do nothing. A'udhu billah. No, of course not. Of course not. Just like the path of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you address and you fight against injustice, for sure, for sure. And of course, Imam Hassan too, alayhi salam. It's two different paths. But the inward state is rida, with Allah's decree. And the outward form is action. Action.
Okay.
Action in addressing the injustices according to the Sharia. You cannot manifest the divine names, al-Muntaqam and so on, without recourse to the Sharia, because then you'll be imbalanced. This is what other groups and factions and countries do in the world. They have recourse to these names and they say, I'm justified in doing it. What's the problem? Okay, but when you don't have the Sharia to do it, you do it out of balance.
Right.
That's it.
Thank you.
But the internal state is rida. Yeah. If anyone needs to go, please, you can start leaving now. And if you have more questions, Jazakallah khairan so much for attending. And I'll stick around for 5-10 more minutes if you want to stay with me. I'll stick around and you can ask whatever you need to ask. But if you need to go, please go. And mashallah, Allah barak fiikum, and have a lovely day and blessed evening. Allah barak fiikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'll hang around for 5-10 more minutes and we'll stop recording here.
Okay. I was just going to ask, when you said about the story of Musa and Islam, when he said inshallah and then said things afterwards, what was the form? What did he actually say? What was the structure of what he said incorrectly? What was the incorrect? Do you know what I mean? So he's,
okay, really good question. It's not incorrect, but it's a higher level. It's a higher level of knowing, right? Which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam brings, right? The thing that was of a lesser level, or quote unquote incorrect, was that he didn't place the word insha'Allah where Allah placed it. So Allah puts insha'Allah in Surah Kahf at the end of the ayah, which when you put things in the same place that Allah puts them in, for the sake of adab, you get special rewards for that, and you get special barakah for that. وَلَا تَقُولُنِّي لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ. And don't say that I will do something tomorrow, except if Allah wills.
Yeah.
So you put at the end of the sentence. Now, Musa, he says, قال, he said, you will find me, God, willing to be patient, and I won't disobey you. But he should have said, he should have said, you will find me patient, and I won't disobey you, inshallah.
Yeah.
Had he done that, he would not have been impatient with Khidr.
Yeah. Inshallah. Inshallah, we get the strength of that putting the inshallah and the
It's
support from
it's
that.
interesting.
Inshallah. Yeah.
I mean,
Nowadays we use like we usually put like when we're talking in Arabic, inshallah first. I just realized this. Like, inshallah, I'm going to do this and that.
Yeah. No, I thought about the same thing, but you know what it is? You know what it is? It's not about the inshallah, but that's just like the one example we talked about, but that's not what it is. It's about someone who establishes a relationship with the Quran and Kareem, and he has a love for it until it mixes with his flesh and his blood, just like the dua, right? Well, I'll merge the Quran with my flesh, my blood, and my heart, and my mind, and my soul. Merge it with everything until you become one with the Quran, and you can't think, you can't see, you can't do anything except by the Quran. So then by nature, you have adab with it and just do it of second nature. And then you see the wonders that come from that. So this is a form of art, which I have no right to speak about because it's not my subject, but it just reminded me of something. So barakallahu feekum to all of you for bringing this up. But there's a story by Émile Zola. He's a French writer of the, I think, 19th century, something like that. Émile Zola. He writes a novel called Thérèse Raquin. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a bit of a, maybe, it's one of these kind of novels that's typical of the era. But there's a man who can't be with a woman who's married to someone else, so he murders the man. But in murdering the man, right, something happens. Now, before that, the antagonist in question is a poor artist. He is a low-quality artist. He's a bad artist. He doesn't do good art. So the critics laugh at him. But after he murders the man, so he can be with this girl, suddenly, when the critics go into the studio, they see that he produces marvelous art because he had an intense experience. And they said, but there's just one critique we have and one question. Every single one of your drawings and paintings and sketches is of the man, is of this particular man. Who is he? And it was the man that he murdered, because he became merged with that experience. So he could only draw that thing. So that's a negative dhulmani kind of jama'. But when it's a nurani jama', like with the Quran, then your whole interaction with wujud is in accordance with the structure of the Quran.
Can I just interject when you were just saying about,
yes,
because literally even when we relate it to like Eid al-Adha, where you the act of performing a sacrifice of the sheep, whatever. If anyone has performed, I haven't personally performed tadbiyah, but from what I've heard is that you are absorbing a form of power, but then also when people murder people, unfortunately, some of them, it's a form of absorbing an energy or power. So like it's like you're inheriting something from the other person you're taking, subhanallah. So it's very interesting how you're talking about how you start drawing everything. What he was actually, anyway, subhanallah, sorry.
You've raised a very important point, and I'll raise you one thing further, because you're going to come across this in Musa, the wisdom of Allah and subhanAllah, the children of the time Musa being murdered, because Shaykh Allah says min ajal Musa. Why? Because Fir'aun wanted to kill the one who was supposed to overthrow him. So then all the spirits, Shaykh Allah says, of those little boys and girls who were murdered by Fir'aun's men, they joined the body of Musa as Maddad and helped him defeat Fir'aun. And he says, I don't know anyone before me who's talked about this. So all those spirits join him and assist him in defeating Fir'aun.
I've been hearing that a lot as well about all the shaheed, the shuhada of Palestine and all the children. They are they are behind that awakening that's happening around the world. Spiritually, they're behind it. SubhanAllah.
That could be related, right? Like we don't know what's going on in the spiritual realm, which is why, as I'm sure like C.D. Derrick will point out, you have to put things in their proper order. Alam al-ghayb, then alam shahada. How is alam al-ghayb influencing alam shahada? This is how you have to think. Otherwise, one is blind one eye, so you're a kafir. Not in Sharia, na'udhu billah, but in your internal state, you think there's only alam shahada. No, there, you have to understand and see the influences coming from alim al-ghaib into the shahada as well.
Wow. Really beautiful. Thank you so much. MashaAllah.
Yeah, that's really like a balm for the soul. And that's what it's like being with the awliya. It's just balm for the soul. And see, Nadir or Nadir, he's right. You live with the awliya to learn how you obtain this adab, the correct application of the sharia. It's the companionship with the inheritors of the prophets. I'm in full agreement with this. And this is correct nasiha. Jazakumullah khairan. Right, if there are any more questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, we'll just leave it at that.
Allah bless you. Thank you. Good night. Sleep.
Allah يبارك فيك. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
السلام
Let's stop recording.
شكرا جزاكم الله كل
Allah يبارك فيكم.